With budget. I'll look it up. Welcome, everybody, to the February 7th, 2022 regular Board of Alderman meeting. Would everybody please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Weggie.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill. Oh, she's muted, but she said here. And Alderman Shelton.
Here.
All members are present.
Great, thank you. Next up on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any amendments, any changes? Any objection to approving the same by acclamation? Seeing none, that will be so approved. That brings us down to item number 4, public hearing. This is a public hearing for a text amendment amending sections 400.1370 and 400.1380 of the zoning code relating to the conditional uses in the GC or General Commercial District and the PD Plan Development Overlay District to remove certain auto-oriented and other uses as conditional uses. We are going to continue this public hearing to the March, I guess it would be the first meeting of March, the Board of Alderman meeting, is that right? Because Public Works is
Whitney
going to
here?
take this up.
They're going to take this up next week.
Oh, next week, that's right. So we're going to continue this till February 22nd,
That's
Board of
correct.
Alderman meeting.
That's
Okay, so
correct.
we're going to continue this public hearing to, well, I guess I'll gavel it open. I need to open up the public
Yes,
hearing
you
for
do.
this.
Right.
I'm going to open up the public hearing for the text amendment. Anybody in the public care to address the board, now is the time to do so. But we are going to continue the public hearing to the February 22nd, 2022 Board of Alderman meeting in light of the fact that Public Works Committee is going to take this matter up next week at their meeting.
We have someone in the gallery with their hand raised.
Okay.
You're welcome to talk.
This is Lois Truan. I had my hand raised just to see if I was connected, but I'm okay now. I will unmute. I did not mean to speak to this issue. Sorry.
All right, no problem, Lois. All right, so we will move on then to item 5, citizen comments. Anybody in the public care to address the board? Again, now is the time to do so. You will be given up to 3 minutes. Looks like we have none, so we will move on to mayor and alderman reports. I have, first up is the mayor, I have just one, and that is just to let the public know that this morning we treated the Public Works Department to a breakfast to show our small token of appreciation for all their hard work. Last week, as everyone will remember, we had quite a bit of snow for St. Louis, and the employees of the Public Works Department worked extremely hard to get the streets cleared. Makes it very important, as you might imagine, for our first responders. You know, our police need to be able to get around, our fire department needs to get around, and those folks made it so that they could do so safely. And what also amazed me is that we continued with trash pickup. Even with the, the massive snow coming down, I was shocked to see that they were out on Thursday morning picking up trash. And for those of you who have not seen this, just to give you some statistics on what all they did last week, our Public Works Department plowed 1,718.2 lane miles in 6 plow vehicles, clearing Brentwood streets plus parking lots and sidewalks at each city facility, applied 125 tons of salt to Brentwood streets during the time of February 1st through February 4th, collected trash, recycling, yard waste, and Christmas trees during the winter storm event, and worked 12-hour shifts each day, 24 hours per day. So again, this was just simply what we did this morning to show, it was a small token of our appreciation, but again, just to show our appreciation for all their hard work. So that's it on the mayor's report. Next up is Alderman Plufka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to encourage everybody tonight to, at 10:10 is the puck drop for the United States women hockey team versus Canada. They're the two real class teams in the entire Olympics, and they're going to play tonight at 10:10. The reason I'm bringing it up is that one of the three goalkeepers on the women's hockey team, USA women's hockey team, is Alex Cavallini. She is from Wisconsin. She's a resident of Brentwood, lives in Ward 1 with her husband, Aiden, who is the son of Gino Cavallini, who was a St. Louis Blue. And she is one of their three great goaltenders, best goaltenders in the tournament so far. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch, and I would encourage you to do so and support our favorite daughter, Alex Cavallini.
Thank you. I guess Brentwood really is the hockey capital of St. Louis. Absolutely. Alderwoman Tice.
I'd just like to echo my thanks to the Public Works staff for what they did last week. It was really remarkable, and I'm always amazed that the Brentwood streets are cleared oftentimes before some of the more major thoroughfares. So kudos.
Thank you. Alderman Weggie.
Just would like to pile on thanks to Public Works. I was quite shocked to see the recycling truck go by first thing in the morning, despite me telling my wife that it would be much later in the morning. So she would like to thank you for once again proving her right. But we really do appreciate it, and I've heard that from residents all across. So thank you very much.
Alderwoman Sims.
I will chime in as well and offer my sincere thanks. I saw the trucks go by on my street multiple times at all hours of the night and in the morning. So thank you for helping, ensuring that I was in fact able to get to work, much to my boss's satisfaction. Thank you.
Alderman Lockmuller.
Dittos on the thanks to Public Works Department. No other report. Thank you.
Alderman Gould.
The only thing that I would add to the thanks is that I was one of them that watched the truck go by before I even got my trash out. And thank you to Public Works and the rest of the city staff for implementing what they always do. And if you notify them, they come back and pick it up. Yeah. So thank you for doing that. And just as a reminder to citizens, if that ever happens to you, then get a hold of the city and they'll make arrangements to come get your trash so you don't have to wait a whole nother week.
Okay, Alderman Shelton.
I'll echo what everyone else said, and especially in Ward 4, I know we have our trash issues. So I know the city Public Works made the effort to come back around and pick it up because we don't have a great area to store it when you miss your time. So thank you, and like everyone else said.
Great, thank you. And Alderwoman O'Neill, who is joining us via Zoom. You're muted. No? Okay. I'm sure she's saying thank you to Public Works for all their hard work last week as well.
Are you reading lips?
Yeah. Okay. So that will move us down to City Administrator's Report. We have quite a few items. The first up is presentation by Kerb, Eck, and Breckel, I believe. Is that right, Bola?
That is correct. Are they online?
Gina's.
Gina Cochran?
Gina, the floor is yours.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So here today to present the Independent Accountant's Report on the agreed upon procedures related to the expenditures of the Certificate of Participation issued in association with the Brentwood Bound Renewal Project for the period from July 1st through September 30th of 2021. So there were no written requests for disbursements for the 2018 series Certificate of Participation period, for the period, but for the 2019 series Certificate of Participation, there was a total of 66 invoices that totaled just over a little over $4 million in expenditures. So in the procedures that are listed in our report, we only found one exception that was noted, and that was related to the payment of invoices to Armstrong Teasdale during the period for 5 invoices totaling just over $19,000. So one of those 5 invoices was incorrectly listed on the warrant list, and it was overstated by about $10,600. That resulted in an excess payment to that vendor. But upon receipt of the payment, the law firm was notified, and management provided support for the fact that the excess funds that were paid to the law firm were actually refunded and deposited back into the certificate of participation account. So that is the only item that we identified in our report on those 66 invoices.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, any questions for Gina on the report? Seeing, no. So thank you,
All right.
Gina.
Thank you, Mayor and Board of Alderman, for having me tonight.
Certainly. Next up is Brentwood Bound update. I think Craig, you're taking this.
All right, good evening. Craig Schiller with Navigate Building Solutions. So running through the expenditures since the last Board of Alderman meeting, starting with construction costs, total spent was $699,137.64. Next is soft costs. Total spent since the last board meeting was $115,412.86, and that was spent on material testing, design fees, project management fees, and development consulting. There were no changes to property acquisitions. And then down below in the categories of funding, the city received the full payment from MSD for the Frederick Roofing property acquisition. So that $800,000 check was received and cashed. In addition, the city received another Gravers Greenway reimbursement check. So that amount has been updated. And then down in the additional funding sources, the city received another check from MSD for their grant. So that amount has been updated. So that's the typical update. I also included a second page because I know we're going to be transitioning to talking about the destination playground and water play area, and you all are going to be contemplating spending an additional $5 million on that project. So if you go to page 2, I wanted to give you a report to show what the next report would look like if you all approved that, that project. So as I'm going to talk about more in detail in the presentation, the city does have enough money in the categories, in the additional funding sources, which is the bottom part of the report. So what would happen at the next meeting would, the $5 million plus, it's like roughly $5.2 million would get moved up to the categories of funding. And that would affect the categories above because the construction costs would go up by exactly $5 million. And then because some of these amounts are not exact, it's roughly like $5.2 million that would get moved up. The contingency would go up by that remaining amount. So those are the two categories that would be affected. You'll see at the bottom section, the categories of funding. Like I mentioned, the project would go from $90,126,000 to $95.3 million. And in the additional funding sources down below, the only thing left would be the economic development sales tax projections, and then one item, which is a COP investment income for the 29 COPs, because that's one of the items that doesn't have to be spent on Brentwood Bound. It could be spent otherwhere. So I left that down there. But I just wanted to show this to you all in advance of this presentation, just so you could see, you know, where the money would come from and how the categories up above that we routinely talk about would be reflected if you all approve this project.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for Craig on the report? Keep in mind, if you have questions about the funding for the later presentation, we certainly would entertain the questions at that time.
Sure.
But other than that, do you have any questions? Alderman Gould.
Yes, as it relates to the GRG reimbursements, are they as we get parts of that project done, is that how they're reimbursing little
Correct.
bits of it? Okay.
Correct, yeah, so the construction improvements have to go in place, and then Brentwood, Navigate, and Gravers Greenway sit down and we show them like the pay application, showing that the work was done, and then we have to submit a form that we all sign and submit to Gravers Greenway, and then they issue a check within 30 days.
Okay, great. And then I know that a question has come up in the past about the excess EDST, sorry. The acronym all
The tongue
mixed
twister.
up, yeah.
Yeah.
And whether or not that excess is able to be used to pay down debt on the project COPS. I just, do we have a response for that yet?
Eric, do you want to?
That's a question the bond counsel,
Yeah.
for bond counsel to answer, and I do not have a response from them.
I looked at all the documents that Mark Grimm had provided to me, and I don't see where the debt service is specifically mentioned. I know that in the past, Kevin had cited the state statute, and there's a list of everything that that money can be spent on, but that particular one is not mentioned. So it is my goal to talk to
Okay, so
both legal counsel so we can get a response to that.
But
The only-
just because it's not
The reason I
mentioned,
defer to Finance Counsel is unless we've got something in the financing documents that overcommits that resource. Statutorily, it can certainly be spent on, you know, any variety of things, including this project.
okay, so just because it's not listed doesn't mean we can't do it. We just have to get clarity on
The
that.
statute's written in terms of including but not limited to.
Got it.
More information coming. I was prepared to send that out to you tonight since we all talked about it this morning, but I was missing that part, which is
Okay.
why. So I hope that before the end of the week, I'll be sending out communication to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Craig? Okay, thanks, Craig. Next up is a presentation of the Destination Playground or Play Space.
Okay, bear with me. Okay, so switching gears into the next exciting project that would really wrap up Brentwood Bound is the Brentwood Bound Destination Playground and Water Play. Tonight, we're going to be going through a lot of information, going through the playground equipment proposals and all the progress update. But we're going to be seeking 4 different approvals from you at the end of the presentation. So there are some motions we're looking for from you all to give us direction in moving this project forward. The last time we met with you all was back on October 14th, and that's when we got a couple critical motions to keep the project moving. And I just wanted to mention that since October, Navigate works with a lot of different municipalities throughout the region and a lot of different parks directors. And I've heard more buzz about this project in the past couple months than I've heard about any Brentwood Bound project. So it's really exciting because people just say, hey, I've heard about what Brentwood's doing with this playground. Tell me more about it. And they're just really excited about it. So it really shows how you guys are doing tremendous things with Brentwood Bound, but the impact of this destination playground to this region is really exciting. And we're starting to feel that, and we haven't even started construction. So it's really cool. But to do a quick recap on where we've come since that last board meeting, you all gave us a couple approvals in October. One was to start stockpiling of that fill soil for future work. So as you may recall, you know, Brentwood Bound's exporting hundreds of thousands of cubic yards of dirt. And in this destination playground, a lot of it is changing the topography to really shape up almost like a new park within Brentwood Park. And you all made the right call to capture some of that soil before it was taken off site and brought over to this part of the project. And that way there's money being saved. So you aren't paying the contractor to move dirt. And then later, if you decide to do this playground, which we hope, you're not paying another contractor to bring dirt back on. So that work should have started by now, but we've had a little bit of weather that's impacted us. But that's going to happen in the next week or so, which is really exciting. The other item that you gave us approval to move forward on was to bid out the playground equipment. And really, what's unique about that is, you know, it's not like an actual hard bid where it actually went out for a request for a proposal. So that was really exciting because it allowed us to start that process early and to make sure that we got best value for Brentwood, because not only is that critical to keep the project on schedule, but it's also important because it helps the city lock in pricing for this equipment, and which is really important in today's day because every month prices keep going up and up. Next, you gave approval for SWT to continue with the design plans for this $5 million regional destination amenity. So they have been working on that, and the plans are at what we call design development, which is roughly 60% plans. SWT also submitted to MSD. That's a big milestone too, because the plans have to get so far advanced to allow the coordination with various jurisdictions. So the fact that submittal went in and those discussions have been ongoing with MSD is a big project milestone. Pendleton will need to be vacated where that road goes into Brentwood Park. So we've already started looking at that and meeting with a property owner that would be affected by that. All those discussions have gone really well, but that process has started as well. And then through all this, I talked earlier about some of the excitement with, these various municipalities and parks directors and hearing about the buzz, but we've also heard some excitement from some of these development firms that have expressed interest with the city of Brentwood. So, some of the buzz we're also hearing from that private market is how this can help support that economic renewal, which is a big vision with Brentwood Bound. Another item that's come up because of getting these playground equipment proposals out early is we're able to maximize bid competition. So that's really important because one approach to doing a project like this is you could wait until the design documents are completely done and then bid out the playground equipment to one vendor. And that way the design team can work with them and actually complete the rest of the drawings. The downside of that is, if there's ever a single source bidder, they're going to raise their prices because they're the only bidder. So the team has taken a very prudent approach to maximize bid competition by doing this early approach of issuing an RFP for playground equipment. So that way we can get multiple vendors, and the city did receive 5 vendors. So that is helping make sure the taxpayers get best value here. And I'll talk about that a little bit in subsequent slides. And then lastly, because the project has been able to get it advanced, the city was able to get renderings and use those drawings, and Eric was able to get the city a municipal grant of $370,000 dedicated to this project. So it's working, and Eric will tell you over and over again he's not done, that he wants to continue to get more and more donations and grants, but it just shows you how, when you advance a project, you can use that information to help kind of sell it. And that was really exciting that the MML really looked at this project favorably and gave the city $370,000. Okay, so next is I'm going to walk you through the playground equipment selection process. So like I mentioned, this is different than all the other bidding processes that we have done with Brentwood Bound. So traditionally, we finish the drawings, we take the drawings out, and we bid it to the market, and it's called a hard bid. But we can't do that with this type of project because the playground vendors actually have to design all their pieces of playground equipment. And it's really important on a project like this where you're integrating playground equipment with the topography and other hardscapes, like where it ties into sidewalks, that those playground equipment vendors that are selected become part of the design team to allow for the whole design document process to be completed. So that was another one of the reasons why we had to put this out to bid earlier, was to make sure that these vendors can get on board to help SWT complete the design of the project. And then once that design's done, then those drawings will be put out to bid for another bid package, and that's a traditional general contracting package like we've done for previous Brentwood Bound projects, because the general contractor will actually install the playground equipment, but we need those vendors actually design all their parts and pieces and work with SWT to get from this stage to those construction documents. And as I mentioned earlier, just to reiterate, we wanted to lock in pricing early because every month prices go up. So that was a big component because this playground equipment's roughly $1.1 million. And we're seeing, plastics and metals go up by 10% some months. So that's 6 figures if you miss a milestone. So we wanted to lock in pricing as early as possible to help mitigate risk. So what this process looked like, is back in fall, the city developed that bid package and specification, to go out to bid, and they worked with STBT on that. And then those RFPs were issued back on December 7th. The city received 5 proposals from 5 different vendors on January 7th. The design review committee, which consisted of Brentwood staff, SWT, and Navigate, then met and reviewed all those different playground equipment. You can see the pictures. We would meet in SWT's office. SWT would put on a big tack board, all the different pieces of equipment, because they're all very unique, and all these vendors will look at a slide, for example, very differently than another vendor. So it's really important to really get everything on the board and look at everything holistically as well. Then From that first meeting, there were some clarifications because sometimes when you just get things on paper, you need to follow up and say, hey, I know this is what this slide looks like, but we need to make sure we truly understand that. So then SWT went back and talked with the various vendors and received some clarifications. That group got back together on January 24th and then talked about some of those responses. Some of those responses actually caused some revisions to the selections of the equipment because they weren't favorable to the overall project. And then after that meeting, the team had a recommendation that they wanted to bring forth to Public Works first, which was last Monday, and then now that same recommendation to you all tonight, February 7th. So I keep talking about how this is a different process. You know, and another reason why it was a different process was it's not just based on money. A lot of times when we do hard bids, like for the GRG project or for flood mitigation, we just primarily look at the number. We do talk about qualifications, but it's mostly about the low bid. And what's different about this is because this was a request for proposal, it's not all tailored to the cheapest product. And that's because all these are custom pieces, and again, they're putting out a concept of what it could look like, but they're gonna be working with the team to finalize everything as the documents get completed. So some of this criteria, I shouldn't say some of it, all the criteria that the various vendors are weighted against are listed on this slide. So some examples are unique to the region. So it was important to the committee to make sure that this is not like every other playground. The playground equipment is not like what's in Tillis Park or in Memorial Park. I mean, making this a very unique destination playground. That it supports inclusive play and meets criteria for accessibility, just making it inclusive to everyone. Use zone and safety requirements. So sometimes these playground equipment vendors will submit on a product that may require more safety surfacing, more of a safety zone, but that doesn't work with the design that SWT's put together. And by sometimes making a change has a lot of ripple effects into other parts of the project. So the team had to really look at all the different requirements for the playground equipment to make sure it fit into that overall design. That there were diverse activities, the equipment scale made sense, you know, if they wanted a certain type of climbing feature, they wanted to make sure it actually fit that space and it's not significantly smaller. Stays within budget, so money is a factor, it always is, so that was a component of this. Meets national safety guidelines, and then maintenance needs. So these were all the things that the team put scores to, and that ultimately is what led to the various selections that are brought forth to you all. Next is design development cost breakdown. So the goal on this slide is, you know, some people could wonder, hey, if the playground equipment's $1.1 million, how is it a $5 million playground? And what we wanted to show here is that there's so much more to this. This is like an independent park within Brentwood Park. So there's a lot of grading, which is what earthwork is, bringing up the topography to support this area. There's significant cost in hardscape, you know, so that's a lot of the concrete materials that, you know, will make up the water play area and the sidewalks that meander around through the park. There's a pavilion in there. The equipment install and surfacing. So like I mentioned, these playground proposals that we're presenting to you all, that's just the equipment and design of that equipment. It doesn't include the installation. So that second bid package, the final bid package, will include that equipment install. In addition, surfacing is always a big cost on a project like this. That's that kind of rubber safety surfacing that you feel when you walk on these playgrounds to create more of a safety factor. Landscape irrigation, utilities, miscellaneous costs, owner furnishings, and then the play equipment is what we're presenting to you all tonight. So that's how it gets up to $5 million. As these projects advance through design, you know, the numbers will change because the design does advance. We do new estimates and costs are constantly changing. But what the team is constantly working towards is making sure the budget is $5 million or less. And so we don't really get into the certain dollars and cents of each one of these items. It's holistically, we got to keep this at $5 million or less because that's what the target we've been given. Next is funding. So the construction cost, like I mentioned, is $5 million. And I walked through that earlier also as part of the city administrator update. But this slide's to show you just, you know, where that money would come from beyond what I talked about earlier. So Not using contingency, Brentwood has $5.2 million in additional funding sources. And as part of that, $5.2 million is that $370,000 municipal grant that Eric got a few months ago. Brentwood is projecting to receive an additional $2.4 million in excess economic development sales tax by end of 2023. And we don't need that money right now. It's just there, as I always like to have a plan A, B, and C. So things didn't go well. We've got contingency, which is not factored into this, which is $4.1 million. And then beyond that, there's additional funding sources, and then there's the excess EDST as well, if the city ever got in a bind for any certain reason. So that grand total projected additional funding sources is $7.6 million. And like I keep talking about, none of those numbers include the $4.1 million of contingency that I talk about as part of my Brentwood Bound update every Board of Alderman meeting. So that wraps up my slides. I'm going to introduce you to Ted Spade, principal of SWT, to talk about the fun stuff.
You mean the dollars and cents and the fun stuff? It's all very necessary. Thank you, Craig. Yeah, you summed it up very well, and I'm not going to go through all this in detail, but I'll be glad to stop or slow down if you want me to. But again, kind of the goals, again, is really creating something that's memorable, a destination. I hesitate to even call it a playground, right? It's an entire experience. I like where Craig said it's kind of a park within a park, but it's really creating a number of things, whether it's a recreation activity, connecting kids to nature, the greater outdoors, really connecting families together, grandmas and grandpas and parents. And so when we talk about accessibility and connectivity, we mean for all people. And so we see this much more than just the playground itself. Just a reminder, the pink area is about 3 acres in size. Some of you knowing O'Day Park was that area was a little around 2 acres in size, not including the parking lot area. So this is a significant play experience that you're undertaking. And really, it's kind of the heart of the park in a way. It really occupies that space between the amphitheater and the event pavilion and really becomes a crossroads within the park along the GRG Trail. So I'm excited about its positioning and ultimately how we've kind of carved out this space for this environment. The renderings that you had done, again, just to give you a sense of scale, even this doesn't even do it justice. This is a big space, and it needs kind of this bigger gesture, and it will be able to fit a lot of people and a lot of activities, and people will be coming back time and time again and discovering something new. So as we look at this, some of you may remember when we presented this to you, we broke it into these 5 areas: the water play area, the family fun area, the adventure spine, the crazy climb, and then the hub. The hub being kind of the main feature pavilion that everything pivots around. So I'll be presenting these different areas to you so you can see how they break down and how the playground equipment was selected and why we selected it this way. But thinking about this as an entire environment, I mentioned connectivity. Kids just love running around sometimes, right? Exploring, going from place to place. And so we wanted to make sure that there was a clear hierarchy of spaces. Our main accessible paths into the park or into the play environment are these 2, what I call the question marks, that conclude at the very ends there. That is all accessible walkways, meaning they're all under 5% grades. They aren't ramps. They don't have grasping rails. So they're very comfortable to meander through the space and then get up. By the time you get up to 1, you're 12 feet up in the air, which is kind of cool. Is you have that sense of drama as you go through there. And then you see a series of those purple lines, which are these tertiary spaces. Those are the connective tissues between the different play zones. And I always find it quite interesting when we go back to our playground, something like Veterans Tribute Park, and you see how people interact through those different areas. So you think about these as like big outdoor rooms, right? The big family play area, the adventure play area, spine, the crazy climb. These are all big outdoor rooms, and there's all that interconnectivity that goes through there. So the first area, the family fun area, this is where I see a lot of the younger kids and the parents playing together and being together, although I think they'll want to go to the, maybe I'm getting a little too old to go and climb those big tall things, but there will be parents that will want to climb up there with their kids. But this is a little bit more tamed down. It's meant to be the closest to the park entrance, the closest to the bathrooms. And this is where we would have the major swing area. So the major swing area has a 3-bay swing that holds 6 different swing types there. And when I say swing types, we want to have a number of experiences. Everybody's traditionally knows the belt swing. That's the one that you do the underdoggy on and you go really high up in the air. But then you also have kind of the belt swings or the harness swings. You have the more ADA type swings. And then you have a you and me swing, which you could, like a parent can sit down and then have their kid across from them and be swinging together with them. But in all, we have 14 to 16 types of swings throughout the entire play area of different types. But what I would call the dedicated swing area is this particular area here on the left-hand side of the slide. But the main feature piece is this kind of amorphic amoeba type of climbing element. This climbing element is a ground-based element. And what we mean by ground-based is it's not post and platform. You're not up in the air. You don't have to go upstairs. You don't have to go up ramps. Everything is accessible and inclusive. And so many people can get into this space and as you get older, you'll probably want to climb to the top. But the young kids that just want to try out the bottom and only fall a foot will be down at the bottom. So we find this is a very engaging type of piece of play equipment. It holds up to 50 kids. And there are different things that you can do on it. You could even what's called, some people call the hot lava, right? You don't want to touch the ground. You could literally go all the way around this thing and climb all the way around it without touching the ground. Or you could be in the center of it and have kind of the fort. So there's a lot of imagination that goes with these types of things, and I've always been amazed at how kids will make up their own games on here. There are a number of other things in this area. We have ground-based slides. There's 2 of them that are the roller slides. We have your more of your merry-go-round spinner, which is flush-mounted, which again is very accessible. We did something similar to this at Rankin Jordan Pediatric Care Facility. You have balancing here, and then there's another area element called the rope swing, and that holds up to 6 kids. And this drawing gives you a little bit better idea of what the scale of that is. It's a very significant element, and I think, again, kids are going to be super excited about the space and the excitement in this area. The next area is what I refer to as the crazy climb. We mentioned that this is probably the biggest piece of equipment here. It's called the mini splash. I don't know why they call it the mini splash. I think it looks like a drop of water going in and then it creates a bubble. But that will be one of the main features, and within that there's a number of elements. But in addition to this, we have the scale swings, we have wood logs, we have a zip line. The zip line, I think, is 120 feet long, so 2 kids can go side by side down the zip line. And that will have its own kind of safety fall considerations that we have in this area. But to give you, a little bit of idea of the drama of this space, again, it holds up to about 106 kids. I don't know how they get these numbers, but the playground manufacturer probably has tested these elements. This has not been installed in the Midwest. This is a one-of-a-kind piece. The vendor's very excited about being able to get this in the Midwest market. It is 44 feet long by 22 feet high by 51 feet wide. So again, you get a sense of scale, and if you look at that compared to a couple of your other parks, Memorial Park and Oak Tree Park, you can get a sense how big that one piece is, just fits within that entire play environment for those 2 particular parks. When we get to the adventure spine itself, this is that walkway that's continuing to go up until it gets to this terminus area. And I'm going to work backwards. So at the bottom, you have the terminus area, which has a feature bench with a big tree and then or sound equipment in this area. So this would be the musical instruments in this area. Again, we want that to be something that's engaging, so it's like a little council circle area with musical instruments. And then when you back up from there, you have this bridge crossing where we have a climbing wall, much like O'Day Park, where we have the wall, and it serves two functions. It serves the ability to go from the water play area to the crazy climb area, but along the way, you'll have the climbing wall underneath this bridge. And then when you get over to here, you have the adventure structure. The adventure structure, let me go backwards, sorry. The adventure structure is meant to be, more like the kind of the Swiss Family Robinson, right? It's meant to be a little bit different. It's not the climbing ropes. It's not the cable, what I would say, but it's more of the swing bridges and the wood structures, and this is where we would see a lot of kind of make-believe play in this particular area as well. And before I go on to the next slide, we do have a major slide element here that is 12 feet in height, I believe, 13 and a half feet in height. And that's a ground-based slide, but it has a lot of drama. So if you can't stand the kids playing the music, you take the slide and you're out down below. So you're fast out, but there's also resilient surfacing. So let's say if a kid's a little reluctant and mom and dad want to be with them on the way down, they can walk or run down the side of them. There's that kind of that's parallel, what we call parallel play. The ability to run up and go back down again. It's that parallel type of play activity. There's also this parallel rope climber, which goes up the hillside here. And then we're also going to do wood log steppers underneath the adventure play structure. So again, just to see a sense of scale, you can see here there's these three major nodes within the play structure itself. We have a lot of rope elements in this. We have some climbing pieces as well as a stainless steel slide. And, we don't always do stainless steel slides because they can get awfully hot. But one of the reasons why we like to include them in an inclusive playground is there are a lot of kids and parents with cochlear implants. And so if you go down a plastic slide, there's a lot of static electricity and you can blow out those cochlear implants. So it's good to have a stainless steel slide as part of your offerings in this environment. So we wanted to kind of hold on to that, even though we know that it will be hot certain times a year. So when we roll all of this up, the equipment summary, as Craig said, is a little over $1.1 million. We are on budget there. When we put the budgets together, we're just slightly below it. You could see the cost breakout, what we had budgeted for each area, but as we met as a committee to look and select it, you could see we were able to kind of like work the numbers around in order to get this on budget. So this shows you a little bit more of that detail breakout. Since all of this has been more focused on playground equipment, I just didn't want to forget about how cool I believe having this water play Explorer Creek element's going to be. Because again, I think the impetus of this entire Brentwood bound project is, getting out of the floodway and improving the stormwater management of the Deer Creek watershed and really embracing that. And so we like the idea of telling the story of the creeks that run through Brentwood, through water play, through the splash pad, through a number of water sources here. And so we're continuing to work with our aquatic engineer for this. And then we're also working with the stormwater management story. So as Craig said, we're going through MSD here and how we might interpret the stormwater in this area as well. So you roll all that up together, it creates a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, and there's lots of landscape to be quiet spaces, make it multi-seasonal. We have the parkitecture, I call it. The architecture vocabulary here wants to be something unique. It's not right out of a catalog and you can say, I've seen that pavilion in this area. All of this is going to be unique architectural structures that we're creating for you. And then lastly, just not forgetting about just kind of the imagery, thinking about the materials, thinking about the seasonality of the space, making this a multi-season experience, making sure it's very tactile in the way kids and parents interact with nature, the way they interact with the play environment, the way even the senses, the smells, all that's very critical to success in making this a destination play experience. So the stormwater side, we want to continue to look for possible grants. Eric and I'm sure we'll have some talks about this. I think this is a unique area to deal with, monarch way stations and bird habitats and things like that. So I think I don't want to lose focus of that and the educational message that we have the opportunity to provide in this location. So one of the other things that our package going forward, and Craig's going to talk a little bit more about this here in just a second, is we are still looking at carrying different alternates in the package. We had talked a little bit about the water capture system for irrigation as an alternate. We've talked about the family pavilion area by the family fun area, and then also the alternate for the overlook going over the GRG trail. So the base budget, everything that we just talked about is the base budget. That's what fits into the $5 million bucket as we've currently cost estimated to date. So I'm going to hand it back to Craig, and then I'm sure you'll have questions, but I'm going to let him talk about schedule and where we're going from here.
Okay, so we've talked about all the playground equipment bidding process, which is the phase we just wrapped up in with the presentation last week at the Public Works Committee and then also tonight at the Board of Alderman meeting. So, with your all approval, the design will, continue to advance, and that'll take the rest of February and March to get completed. And that allows that last bid package, that goes to the general contractor I spoke about earlier, to go out to bid in April. And that would allow construction to start May and for the overall project to be wrapped up in spring of '23. So that's been a milestone that we've been working towards for a while, is having all the projects and having Brentwood Park having that grand opening in spring of '23. And this project could be a part of that overall Brentwood Park opening, which would be really exciting. So I mentioned earlier that we would be seeking 4 motions from you all. The first one is the approval of the proposed playground equipment and the authorization for the city to go into contract with the proposed vendors. So we had that budget of $1.1 million, and you can see that we were $97 below budget. So kind of skated that one right through, but hey, under budget. That's all good in this current climate, so we're excited about that. Next is, with your approval of the playground equipment vendors, we also would need approval from you all for SWT to proceed with the preparation of construction documents. So those are the documents that would be used to go out to bid, and also the documents that would be used to actually build these facilities. And then also engaging those playground equipment companies to incorporate the selected pieces into the design. Next is, there were 2 alternates that Ted showed. One was for the pavilion. That SWT's contract is to design a $5 million playground. And there are both this alternate and the next alternate, which is that big wooden overlook, would add about $650,000 to the construction costs, taking them beyond their design contract. So they would be due a change order if you all wanted to have the chance to fund that family pavilion. Eric's going to talk about how he's got, that he's really eager to find funding sources for those components and trying to get those alternates approved. And then also at Public Works last week, we heard an interest of at least getting that overlook design so that way you guys had the option, if funding came into place, to have that built. So those are the 4 motions we're looking off from you all. But to wrap this up, Eric is going to close this out, and then we can take any questions from the board.
Craig, just while you had that slide up, I just had one question for you. The second matter, the second request, is there a cost associated with that?
There is not.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. The board approved SWT's contract, I think back in May, to design
Right.
a $5 million playground.
Right.
So all that has been put into the overall soft costs. So you guys have already have that contract approved. We have the funding in our base cost. It's more of just a kind of a contractual matter.
Right, that's included in the amount that this board approved last year.
Correct.
Great, okay,
Yep.
thank you, I'm sorry. Go.
No worries.
So I obviously had a lot to say at the Public Works Committee, so I won't bore you everything with what I said there. But just a couple things. I mean, the staff and I are extremely excited about the possibility of having this play. Again, like Ted, I refuse to use the word playground. It's really an experience. It's a playscape. It's more than just a playground. It's a destination. It's landscaping. Landscaping is just as integral of this thing as everything else. And we're already talking about, how we can use it for things, how we can hold programs, how we do different events and activities utilizing this area. So we're incredibly exciting, and you've heard things. You've heard destination, you've heard unique, you've heard all that, you've heard scale. So, I think I kind of won't bore you again with reiterating all that, but I think the biggest things are, when you think about economic catalyst, and I had a lot of facts at the Public Works Committee, but I think the one that I'd like to reiterate is New York. In New York, they use destination playgrounds. They were funded by economic development money to bring families and businesses back to Lower Manhattan after September 11th. So that's how important that community felt these type of playgrounds were. And if you think about here locally, we've been having conversations with developers. Bola mentioned that last time. They are excited as well. One of the developers specifically has a very live, work, play type of mentality, and he wants to be a part of this area. And it goes back to kind of where I was from the beginning, that this park and that redevelopment area work side by side in tandem together. And the developers even called us back and said, hey, how much parking do you guys need for this? So, I mean, they're already thinking ahead with us about this, and I see this as really a nice partnership. I know funding, I can't talk, if we didn't talk about funding a little bit more, and I think the thing is we're not done. We have, as Bola mentioned, we've just put out a $1.5 million county state infrastructure project grant. So we continue to look for grants, and anytime we find one for this project, whether it's for the playground, whether it's for trails, whatever, we will continue to apply for those grants. And again, we talked about naming rights and things like that. And our first meeting is this Friday with West Community Credit Union. We have others that we're working with, but we're really excited about the fact that we're starting to have those type of meetings and look forward about those things they will say. And lastly, what I said last time is, Brentwood Bound is visionary in what it's doing on Manchester Road, and it's going to create this legacy that the city, for a generational project that will last forever. And I feel the same way about this playground. It's a legacy project for the city. So, thank you.
Great, do we have any questions? I'm guessing we do. We're going to keep this fairly informal for Ted or for Craig or for Eric. And if not, then we'll start moving into the individual 4 items. As you see, we are doing it by way of resolutions. So we're not going to have a first and second. They're not ordinances. So we would like to get votes on each of these tonight. So first of all, any questions for any of the 3? Yes, Alderman Lockmuller.
I guess for you, Ted, the alternative for the water capture system, does that need, like these other alternatives, a design cost factored in if we decide to go
No,
with it?
we have, between Navigate and SWT Design, we did that before at O'Day Park. And so we were just going to work within our budgets that we have right now from a fee standpoint and make that happen.
Great. And I like the way you've incorporated different areas with different ages. As a kid matures, he can move on to these different play areas. So it's just like, I outgrew that park, I'm never going back. There's just you've got different age groups that can continue to come and play there throughout their life.
Yeah, definitely.
Even parents. Thanks.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yeah, as I said the other night, this is just an amazing, incredible design, and you know, I wish I was a kid again to be able to climb these really high 22-foot things. And as I also said the other night, I think the most important slide was number 7, and I'm going to go back. This is more for Craig, I think. I just want to be comfortable with what money is left over. So I looked at your Brentwood Bound update from the last, your last report.
Sure.
And not adding in the $5 million for the playground. So there's $22 million left in the construction budget that is still to be spent.
Correct.
$2 million in soft cost, and then $9,000 in property acquisition, and then $4 million in contingency. So as I look at that, then you've additional money's been raised, and so there's $5 million that you're going to move up. So everything's accounted for in that.
Yeah, everything that we, know about, and that's why we have contingency is the contingencies for unforeseen and unexpected items, and that's why we've got $4 million sitting for that. But everything we know about today, all the construction projects, flood mitigation, GRG, the event lawn building, even SWT's contract for this is all in that $90 million.
Okay, so then my real question that I noticed looking at this is the property acquisition that you had, like, we have $9,000 left in the property acquisition budget. Isn't there more property to acquire that's going to cost us more than $9,000? And
Really, we're going to be updating that amount, and Brentwood's working with St. Louis County to rectify these previously paid taxes. So once we hear back from the county, you'll see those numbers kind of shift around. But there's only one parcel left that we have to acquire, and that's at the corner of Brentwood and Russell.
Okay, so there's
All
only
the other
one.
properties have been acquired.
Okay, so but presumably there might be some money from contingency going into property acquisition, or I can't.
Just depending on how that negotiation goes,
okay.
But it's a really small easement
Okay.
that we need to get.
Oh, just that easement that's left?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just on that corner
Okay.
for this Russell Trail. So, but you're absolutely right. There's not much money left over, which is good because we're done. We're done. We're down to that one parcel.
And that easement has a budgeted amount attached to it.
Correct.
So the only way we go to the $9,000 is if we go over that already a budgeted number.
No, so
That's what hasn't been
this
spent.
amount strictly just, that $90,000 is within that budget amount.
Yeah.
So this amount, that 9,000 left over, would show up here when it goes on the warrant list. But we have the $9,000 in that budget line item.
But I'm looking at the 9,000 as it hasn't been spent yet.
Correct.
So we haven't spent.
We haven't spent it, but it's in that budget line item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, you've accounted for everything, and there's still $4.1 million left in contingency.
Yeah, I've accounted for everything I know about. But that's why we've got $4 million in contingency left for those unforeseen items, which is a healthy amount, considering that if everything goes well, we're going to be done with this project in a little over a year.
Okay, so you think $4 million contingency on $24 million left to spend is a comfortable amount?
I believe so.
Thank you.
Is there a certain percentage that you use in trying to, I think when this whole thing started, you looked at a certain percentage for the contingency relative to the overall project.
Sure, and it really comes down to the construction projects. We like to keep 10% contingency for the construction projects.
Okay.
So every project that we brought to you all had a recommendation to have 10% contingency. So we've had a few change orders that we presented to you all, but they've been very minor in nature. So we've been in construction for, like 2 years, and we've spent a very little amount. We've been doing good out there. But that's the percentage we start with, is that
Okay.
10% on construction.
Okay. Alderman Gould.
Yes, I've got a few questions, some that I didn't think of the other day at Public
Great.
Works, so I appreciate taking a minute to answer those. As it relates to the remaining construction, just in general, and you, like you said, so far, things have gone really well, and we haven't needed to tap into contingency much. What are the remaining risks that we see moving forward from here to 2023 that could come up?
Sure. So, potentially some property acquisitions, not the one left over, but some that we're working on behind the scenes, that we talked about in closed session. So there's risk there, you know, on 2 properties specifically. I've talked about this at a previous meeting that we'll have to settle up with MoDOT when they're done with their property acquisitions. You know, and that should be done in the next couple months, but that's factored in this 4.1 million. We always have unforeseen conditions of things we may find during construction. We're moving so much dirt. I mean, maybe we find some impacted soils or hazardous soils, maybe more rock, but thankfully, you know, we've done really well, and we've moved, you know, a significant amount of dirt in the past year and a half and haven't seen some of those risks come to fruition. You know, there's an unknown risk with working with certain jurisdictions on flood control, you know, that we talk about. So, you know, we're working through that, and right now things seem very positive, but we don't have that answer, right? And that's what we talk about as well. So yeah, those are the main risks that I'm tracking are some of the property related, the jurisdictional related, and some of the construction related items.
Okay, and when you're talking about moving a lot of dirt and maybe uncovering, are you talking mostly digging out the lake area and that?
Yeah, the lake is primarily like dug out. We're down to rock, so you know we're past the most part of like finding hazardous soils there. It's really just phase 2 area. We haven't really started moving dirt. So yeah, there's a few parcels there that could be at risk, but it's really anytime we start moving any significant dirt, any part of this project, you never know when you're going to come across a buried foundation that no one knew was there. You know, so we've seen that a couple times, but they've been very small and very limited or small cost impacts. But it's just what's underground. Nobody knows.
Okay, and for the public that's watching, phase 2 means the area up by Black Creek.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
On the east end.
East of Breckenridge Industrial Court Bridge, and then west of Black Creek, that little section there.
And then my other questions, the slide material, the roller slides, what's the ongoing maintenance on those? Do they need to be, like, it just seems like there might be a little bit more fussy than, to keep them in good condition than just a, like, straight plastic slide that doesn't have a whole lot of moving parts. And then is there a either clothing or finger pinch risks of anything like that where, you know, issues down the road?
Well, I mean, they meet the ASTM standard for that play equipment. So in other words, the playground manufacturer runs these things through safety standards and their lawyers and all the things that go with it. Is there, you know, I don't know. I couldn't answer that in detail. I will tell you these have been used outdoors quite a bit. We've had one recently installed. Well, we've had one at O'Day Park. We've also had it at Rankin Jordan Pediatric Care. Okay. So here we are dealing with a healthcare setting, and they really wanted that from a stimulation standpoint for the kids. But you know, a lot of these are made for outdoors with wheel bearings. I haven't had any facilities people come up to me yet and say, "Why in the world did you spec that?" But I know that these things come with manufacturer warranties, and we rely on the play equipment companies to put them through kind of the safety standards, national safety standards and entrapment standards.
Okay. And then in the adventure structure, I guess I'm also kind of wondering about the need to have the enclosed parts of it, the little sort of huts. It seems like that might be just a line of sight potential issue where kids go and hide in there, and you know,
still working through the detailing.
Is that part of the excessive cost of that, or is it more the piering and structuring?
No, so that structure is going over the landscape. So anytime you have a structure that doesn't have safety surfacing below it, they have to have higher sides to them. I can't remember what the height is, but it's more than a guardrail, which is 42 inches tall. So let's say they're 6 feet tall. We are working through with the vendor to try and figure out, is there another material we can have in there that we could see through better, or is there things that we need to be doing from the safety surfacing side? So we still have a little bit of design. That's kind of the purpose of this process, is once we get under contract with them, we can negotiate some of that design interface. But you're seeing the same thing I saw. and we're trying to reduce some of those site barriers, if you will.
Okay. And then the MSD or the what you had in there in the presentation is performative landscape. Is that all included in the costs that you guys have already done? So that's not going to be just an extra like, oh, if you really want to do that, then it's going to cost.
No, I mean, we're going to do what the minimum standard is for MSD for stormwater management. Meaning if we've got to do the BMPs with the soil systems and all that below that, we're working with them right now to sizing that. But that entire buffer area that I'm calling kind of this dry stream and native plants and all that, all those numbers are in there. But we're not doing any more than we need to fulfill the MSD requirement.
Okay.
That's in our budget, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Weggie.
Yeah, so Ted, can you elucidate a little bit on Steve's question about, so if we're using the reclamation system for the water, it's unclear to me if that's going to be included in the bid that we go out for or not in April.
Yes, so we would include that as an alternate.
Okay.
And so we would put together basically a performance spec for that to include the plumbing and what it would take to do that. And I will be working with Navigate to use a similar spec and a procurement process that they did with O'Day Park and put that in the bid documents so that we have all that on the table for you when you see the various bids and the bid alternates.
Okay, so we would see that as another alternate. And
That's
then would the same thing be true of, we have the alternate of the entranceways? Would those also be an alternate we would expect to see coming in?
Yes,
And I guess they don't need any design.
We're just going to put that in our fee that we have now to do.
Okay.
Yes.
And then to Craig, so can you talk me through a little bit more about the potential risk on property acquisition on the MoDOT? Because I know they had a large number of property acquisition easements they had to do. And I guess I don't see directly where you have included that in our current budget. Or I guess my concern is just that if they're working through those easements and they're several months out, is there a possibility that one could jump up or multiple and get us?
Yeah, so they've been, to your point, they've been working on acquisitions for years. And the Brentwood already gave them a large chunk of money based on the cost share agreement. What MoDOT's told us is they believe that there's a chance that Brentwood could have to pay $800,000 in additional property acquisition expenses for the property acquisitions that Brentwood asked for them to acquire that went above their budget.
Okay, so there's an $800,000 risk, and is that
Correct.
included, would that come out of the contingency if
Correct.
that's realized?
It would come out of contingency.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And I wanted to mention, Eric reminded me of one other thing. When I talk about like risk in phase 1, phase 2 about hazardous soils and stuff like that, they're inside these construction contracts. It's in the construction costs and it's written in the contractor's contract. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of allowances because we believe that we would hit some hazardous soils. So in phase 1, I mean, we've got, a significant, it's 6 figures on coming up with like 10,000 cubic yards of hazardous soils. We haven't hit any yet, so we try to earmark risk within the construction contracts that are not in contingency. They're within that L. Keeley contract that you all approved to help kind of prevent any change orders and keep the project moving if unforeseen things come up. So when I talk about risk of hitting hazardous soils, it's going above and beyond those allowances of quantities that we thought we might hit. And to date, we haven't hit any. So there's a chance that even if we don't hit any, that money would get deducted out of their contract and come back to Brentwood also. So I just wanted to mention that there are funds allocated for some of those construction risks that I keep citing that are not contingency, they're within the construction contract.
Okay. I do have one question before we start hitting these individual resolutions. On slide 21, I think it is, it shows a number of trees, which I thought is kind of interesting compared to, I think, the 2 parks that we looked at. There really weren't any trees in O'Day or the other one, and that's one thing that I really like about this design. Does the cost include the cost of those trees?
Is this the slide you're referring to?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, so we're carrying a separate, landscape. You saw the buckets of numbers.
Right.
We have a landscape and irrigation budget in here. And so, this is kind of a moonscape, so we're gonna rely on making sure we add a lot of trees. Are they gonna be as big as I want them on day one? Probably
Right.
not. But we, every circle you see on here, we've put in our cost estimate.
Wow. Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, Alderman Lockmuller.
Craig, I got one more question. On your schedule page, so you're saying construction, we'd probably be looking at opening spring of 2023.
Correct.
So the tunnel would be done. I mean, this whole area would pretty much be completed by then for
Yes,
a grand
that's the
opening.
goal. Yeah, MoDOT's supposed to be done July of '23, but, a lot of the area in Brentwood will be done before that. We're really trying to get everything done by spring. A lot of the Great Rivers Greenway flood mitigation improvements are supposed to be done winter of '22, early '23. But we want the landscaping to have some time to establish, and you don't want to open a park in January, So having that spring growth and then opening the park with everything together in spring of '23 would be a remarkable grand opening.
Thank you.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve SWT to proceed with the preparation of construction documents for a $5 million destination playground and water play and engaging the playground equipment companies to incorporate the selected pieces into the design?
So moved.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Do we have any other questions or discussions on this particular resolution? Alderwoman Tice.
Yeah, I have a question that I was trying to raise my hand before
Oh,
you
that's-
kept
that's
going. So
okay.
could I
That's
ask
all
Craig
right.
one more question about the finances? Because something sort of came up when Alderman Weggie asked a question. So you talked about the 800,000 that's hanging over potentially with what MoDOT's trying to acquire. Are there, and that would come out of contingency. Are there other things that you have in your head that aren't on this paper that are sort of out there that might come out of contingency? So that's really what I'm trying to figure out is like, how
Sure.
much is
It's
not?
really it's all the things I responded to Alderman Gold, all those risks are, the only one I've got an actual amount for is MoDOT, and that's just kind of a rough order of magnitude that they gave me. The putting an amount on hazardous soils, it's hard to say that. I mean, we've got allowances in the contract, and we haven't hit anything in a year and a half. The first item I talked about was some of the property acquisition items that you guys are working through. So, I can't respond here on what that is, but you've heard in closed session from Armstrong Teasdale what some of those ranges could be, So all the items that I can respond to you on, the only one is MoDOT. The other items you've heard about before, and I don't think I should say it here. I'm sorry.
Perfect. Thank you. No, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to make sure there wasn't anything else that
No.
had a number to it, like you
No.
just said with all.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Alderman Weggie.
I got one question and one comment. So, now Nancy has me worried about something. What about, what about the Great Rivers Greenway segment that runs along Brentwood Boulevard? I know we're possibly going after grant money. Is that allocated for if we do not get grant money for that? Is that all included in the budget?
Yes,
So
we've got a little over $1.5 million based on our estimates to do that project.
okay, so if we don't get that grant, we're still covered on that
Correct.
piece?
That
Okay.
grant that money would be additional funding sources.
Okay,
It'd be like money that we're using on some of these other grants where, hey, where do you want to apply this?
okay. And then my comment is and I said this to Public Works, I think it would be pound foolish for us to not proceed with this. I go back to, when we started this, we had the $2 million, the $3.5 million, and the $5 million playground, and just the footprint differences of those. I feel like we're getting a lot of economy of scale out of the $5 million that we're not going to get from the $2 million. The feedback I've heard from residents is just off the charts on this. And also going back to the community survey that we did when we started this about what kind of entities that our community want to see here. They wanted to see the destination playground. That was the highest thing after the paths, which we're doing. And the other thing they wanted to see was restaurants and things like that along Manchester. How could you not want to put a restaurant on Manchester when there's 500 kids every day at this playground right there? So I am completely in support of this, and I think it is a bold move, but I think it really respects the spirit of what our town wanted us to do in Brentwood Bound.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this first resolution? Alderman Gould.
And this first resolution is about the playground equipment authorization.
This is actually the 5 million.
Okay. I just
You
wanna
read the
make sure
5
I'm-
million.
This is not the resolutions yet.
Oh, you're right, I'm sorry, I'm terribly sorry about that. Yep, jumped ahead. Yep, so we actually don't have anything to do on this.
Well, there is a motion pending, a motion Second. Vote has not been
Okay.
called yet.
Right, okay, so yes. Okay, so do we all understand what the motion is? There's no resolution, it's just a motion.
Okay,
There's no
I'm
funding
confused.
necessary because it's in SDWT's work scope
Right,
already. So it's a
right.
directional motion, if anything.
It's a little different than so actually, it's number 2.
It's the
instead
second
of-
bullet point
it's
on
the
page
second bullet
27.
point. It's not the first bullet point. So that's
Correct.
I think the source, possibly the confusion, for me at least. So, now that we got that all cleared, we all ready to vote? Okay, roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Yes. Motion carries
8-0?
8-0.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to, I guess, the first bullet point, which is Resolution 1335. So for that, can we get a motion to approve, motion to approve Resolution 1335, which is a resolution approving acquisition of playground equipment for the Destination Playground in Brentwood Park?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we've got the motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments about Resolution number 1335?
Mayor
Alderman-
Dimmitt, did we catch who made them, first and second?
I have Alderwoman Tyson, then second by Alderwoman Sims.
That's correct?
That's fine.
Okay.
Hey, however it gets done, I guess.
Alderman Gould.
Yes, I just had a comment about the equipment, and initially I was a little bit bothered by the redundancy of the climbing structures in one area. But more that I think about it, and I want to just get your validation on whether or not my head's in the right space on this, because it is the family fun area is a sort of a smaller scale version of the big kid area that keeps some of the kids at age appropriate doing the climbing, but not trying to go and climb on the big kid thing. Is that
Right.
fair?
right. I mean, we're finding that these kind of free-formed climbing elements have been super successful in destination playgrounds. And so the idea that we introduce the little kids to something that's not quite as huge and as tall makes a lot of sense to us in that family fun area, and then really going all out on the bigger.
So you sort of graduate up to the bigger one, you've kind of developed the skills to climb around on it, so it's familiar, but then takes it to the
Right.
next level, literally.
And then for the people that still want the post and platform, and, you know, there's a place where a wheelchair could roll right into the, you know, right into one of the main points of the post and platform, kind of, you know, the adventure play area, you know, you still have that. So again, we wanted to have a lot of different variabilities and kind of exploration play versus climbing and elements.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
And I should mention, we ended up picking equipment from all 5 different vendors. So it wasn't like we picked one vendor. It just happened that we liked a little of everything, which the bid methodology, I think, worked to our favor that way.
Okay, can we get a roll call on Resolution number 1335?
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Yes, okay. By a vote of 8-0, motion carries.
Great, thank you. And that brings us down to Resolution number 1336, which is a resolution approving a change order with SWT for additional design services for the family pavilion for the Brentwood Park Destination Playground. Can we get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Alderman Gould.
Sorry, I've got more, no.
No.
This is the one element that I think is tough for me to say that, hey, let's spend money to design it. I don't think it adds a lot of intrinsic value to the play. It's just sort of a platform that you go out and look. And whereas I think the water capture and some of the others, they actually provide value and potentially ongoing opportunities, you know, whether it's the Family Fun Pavilion, where it's a rental opportunity, or the water recapture potentially lowers the cost of some of our irrigation needs. This just feels like kind of an extra unnecessary element in the grand scheme of things. And so I don't know that I can support, $30,000 of design fees.
That might be the next resolution too.
Oh, is that,
This is family pavilion.
oh, this is family, sorry, my apologies. Now you know my comments on the other one.
Okay.
Hold that.
Any questions about the family pavilion? No? Okay. Then I guess we are ready to vote on Resolution 1336. Can we get roll call, please, on that?
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Yes. Okay, by a vote of 8-0, motion carries.
Okay, great. And that brings us to Resolution 1337, which is a resolution approving a change order with SWT for additional design services for the overlook for the Brentwood Park Destination Playground.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Alderman Gould?
Yeah, or can you respond to my earlier out-of-turn comment?
We will adopt, yes. Alderman Weggie?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about this much at Public Works, so this was kind of an add-on from the conversation we had there. I think this is worth doing, number one, for two reasons, really. One is, I think it would be good to have the bid and understand how much this actually costs instead of the $400,000 kind of estimate that we have. But more importantly, I think it would be good to make sure they're doing the actual design in case something needs to change with the current design of the playground, as this, incorporates in the hill, if they need to change the slope or something like that. I think that could prevent us from having a later decision to do this. So I feel like this would be wise to proceed just the design, so we know what this looks like and get it to shovel ready so we can make a decision later for it.
Alderman Plufka?
And with all due respect to Alderman Gould, everybody's going to have their own opinion about this, but when we went and visited the Veterans Park, this element was, I think, the most iconic feature of that park. Similarly, it was a walkway that ended and gave you a panoramic view of a very large pond area. It's one of the few pieces in this entire park design that can be used by everybody of all age groups at once. So if you've got a family that wants to go visit a park with a grandparent, maybe somebody's confined to a wheelchair, maybe somebody's not as mobile, all the way down to little kids can utilize this section, and they can get a great view of not only the park, but the water feature that'll be right in front of them, the amphitheater that'll be to their left, and then an expansive view of the rest of the greenway going all the way east. It's likely to be a really impressive view. And to echo what Alderman Weggie said, it's I think it's important at least to try to get a design and see what that design would actually look like. And it's $31,000 to do so. So I'm in support.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, if we can get a roll call on Resolution 1337, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
No.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Yes. By a vote of 7-1, motion carries.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Last item under the city administrator's report is discussion on Union Pacific Railroad and pavement maintenance. Who is handling that? Is that Dan?
There's a lot of information here, but basically, we're looking for a direction on how to proceed with this particular item. This is in regards to the crossing. It's by what used to be Brentwood Materials, to the north of the Metro Garage, where the existing railroad tracks cross Brentwood Boulevard. So the way it is right now, MoDOT would fund most of those improvements. So crossing arms and things of that nature. You're also going to have signals for this new intersection, which would be a four-way with Russell and the Brazos extension. St. Louis County would maintain those signals in the sense that they would, adjust the timing and things of that nature, so we wouldn't necessarily need to do that. However, what is being asked for is $10,000 for maintenance on the surfacing, which we would need to do anyways, because you're going to have concrete, you're going to have pavement markings, things of that nature for that crosswalk. The $12,580 is for signal maintenance, and that would be for anything signal related, whether it's the crossing arms, things of that nature. Union Pacific will not pick up the tab for any of that maintenance cost, nor will MoDOT or the county. So Brentwood is being asked to pick up this roughly $22,000 annually for this maintenance. If we do not do that, then that would change that intersection. We wouldn't get all these improvements at the intersection. This serves a primary function of getting people from one side of Brentwood Boulevard to the other safely, and especially if we're going to connect the parks and have events, say Brentwood Days in the future would be shared in both parks. So that's what we're asking for here, trying to make it as concise as possible. So we just need direction, because ultimately if we do these improvements, Union Pacific will put together an agreement, we'll run it through legal, and then we'll bring a full resolution for your approval.
Okay, so again, just to make sure everybody understands, this is something we've been working on for quite some time to get that crosswalk so that we could connect the two parks, and we were very excited to get that done. And now we're being asked to contribute annually.
Right.
Is this something that we're just simply budgeting this amount? Because we're not necessarily going to be spending this amount every year on maintenance?
That we will be spending this amount on maintenance every year. So as we talked, we would like to ask Kevin to help us come up with language that will give the city certainty that they actually did come and do some maintenance service, that we weren't just
Okay.
paying this money away.
Okay. Oh, so we pay the money to
Them.
state to do, okay,
Right.
got it. So we're going to spend it to them, pay it to them no matter what. Okay,
Right.
that's the only question I had. Anybody else have any questions on this?
I guess just to
go
clarify,
ahead.
so in other words, none of this work would be done by Brentwood employees. It would all just be money that we're transferring over to Union Pacific and this,
That's my understanding
or
from
county?
speaking with Craig.
I mean, that's a
yes.
county road, I guess, right?
Yeah. What kind of, do we need from the board? Do we need a motion to move forward on?
The contract would come back. So
Okay.
yes, just a motion to authorize staff to proceed to negotiate a contract in terms of, under which this obligation would be sorted out and bring it back to you.
Perfect, thank you. Can we get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Wonderful. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, thank you. Now we move on to consent agenda. We only have 3 items under that. Any questions about any of the items or any requests to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims? Yes. Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Yes. Okay, consent agenda.
Great.
By 8-0 vote.
Thank you, Kelly. That brings us down to item 9, old business, under which we have 2 items. First is bill number 6360.1. Can we get a second read of 6360.1 by title only, please, Mr. City Attorney?
I believe
Yeah.
what I was checking on, I'm sorry, Whitney, you going to introduce this? I believe there's a motion to amend Bill 6360 by the text of Bill 6360.1.
Okay. We need a motion for that purpose.
Right, but you want to get the introduction
Okay.
first, and then.
Go ahead, Whitney.
Good evening, Whitney Kelly on behalf of Brentwood. Based upon the last discussion, we did confirm with St. Louis County that the redistricting of the wards, as the legal description did include O.B. Clark's property into Ward 2. However, they inadvertently took it out of Ward 2, so the revised map that you have is Exhibit A, dated 1/31, moved it back into Ward 2. So the ordinance is correct, and now the map is matched the legal descriptions.
Okay, so can we now get a motion to amend Bill number 6360 with Bill number 6360.1?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that motion to amend? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now, I believe we're ready for we do a second read
Make a
on?
motion for a second read? Or- Your Honor, I make a motion for a second read of Bill 6360.1.
Second?
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of 6360.1, please?
Bill number 6360.1, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance amending section 105.030 of the Brentwood Code, City Code, and establishing new wards in response to the 2020 decennial census.
Okay, can we get a motion to perfect 6360.1 into ordinance?
So moved.
Second?
All right, any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Okay. By a vote of 8-0, Bill 6360.1 will become ordinance 4993.1.
Okay, thank you. Now, Whitney, if you would like to bring us up to date on the bill number 6370.
Yes. St. Louis Cremation, the architect is here. They did, based upon the prior discussion regarding the concern of parking, they did contact to the church property to the north. The church did have a parking rental agreement with the prior tenant, and they have extended the same option for this tenant, or this property owner. However, they felt that their use would not really warrant such. However, staff did include in the revised bill specific language that the applicant shall secure and maintain a parking agreement for the minimum of 5 parking spaces, because the minimum code for any office space at the applicant's square footage would be 9. So we required a minimum of 5 to be provided in perpetual joint usage and the common parking for the combination of the uses or buildings for the site.
Okay, so with that, we have brought to this board a revised Bill 6370.1. So can we get a motion to amend Bill number 6370 with Bill number 6370.1?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. So I guess now we want a second read of Bill 6370.1 by title only, please. Or do we need a motion to that effect? Can we get a motion for a second read of 6370.1?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, did I cut you off, Alderman Gould?
Is this just for the second reading?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, yeah, this is just for the second read. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read, please?
Bill number 6370.1, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance granting site development plan approval, site plan approval for the exterior modification to the existing building at 2428 South Brentwood Boulevard for the offices of St. Louis Cremation.
Wonderful. Can we get a motion to perfect Bill number 6370.1 into ordinance form?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Alderman Plufka.
I'm still troubled by the fact that there's still a pole sign in the depiction. I mean, it's the only other thing we mentioned as our concern at the last meeting, and it wasn't changed. I mean, I realize the language, and you quoted this to us last time, that the language in the ordinance itself says that they'll comply and that they're going to look for setbacks to make sure that there's no limited site and danger and all that kind of stuff, but I just don't understand why we're voting on a site plan that depicts a sign that's clearly out of ordinance. I mean, it's out of our own, not in compliance with our own sign.
That is, the rendition at design intent is on the first page, and that was part of their original submittal page. And they were asked to revise it. So if you look down on sheet C2, it shows the new monument sign with the new landscaping in front of the building at the very front. So that is what they're changing it to. And we've asked that they just verify that, I can see about doing it.
Could you
Can you point out where it's identified on C2? I mean, I see the rendering of it, but where is it positioned? Oh, okay. To the north of the sidewalk?
Is it what says proposed 6 foot wide by 4 foot high, 1 foot deep sign with perimeter concealed LED strip lighting for anyone who's looking at sheet C2? I had the same question that Alderman Plufka did, and I brought that to Whitney's attention before the meeting. She pointed that out to me, that, yeah, the first page does still have the pylon sign, but the plan that is to be approved calls out for a monument sign.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah,
answer your question?
that answers
Okay,
my question.
Alderman
It sure
Gould.
does.
Yeah, I shared that same concern, so I'm glad to see that at least in the plans, I have a concern about passing anything that represents something that isn't gonna be.
Right.
So I would feel more comfortable if that rendering at the very beginning of it was, either removed from the documents or updated to be what they actually will put in there. I also think that they should be required to pay for the overflow parking spaces, because if we start to make concessions, I know that they think that they won't need them, but I don't think that's a fair concession for, to start changing our code. So I believe that we would need to require that. The other concern that I have is the material, the roofing, and it being a metal roof. And is that part of an acceptable material, especially being so close to residential? And what kind of sound pollution comes from that during rainstorms or anything like that?
That was discussed, and it's only on the front portion of the new remodel of the front portion of the building.
Oh, it doesn't go through the whole
It's
building?
not, the rest of the building is existing asphalt, so it's only the front. That was specifically addressed as part of the staff report, was the design requirement. The section 400-1380 of the GC district provides that architectural standards, the use of metal siding is prohibited on any elevation of any building that is visible from Manchester Road, Brentwood Boulevard, Eagle Road, and Hanley Road, and on any elevation abuts property that is zoned for or used for residential purposes. The requirement does not pertain to metal roofs. So that was a discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission, not the roof part itself, but the other materials. The roof was not raised, but it is only on that front portion.
Okay.
The rest of it, but the architect is available via Zoom. I'd like to address that specifically too.
So then the material that is on the siding it was discussed at Planning and Zoning. Are they in compliance now with the material that we spec?
Yes, the material, the siding material was more like a concrete board versus metal. It just kind of has a similar look to it, but it's a board and batten kind of look. The standing seam metal roof was just on the front part, and then the rest of it was the existing asphalt. Dark asphalt.
Understood. Yeah, I see it now. I just,
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Alderman Lockmiller.
Yeah, I'd like to make sure we have that parking agreement in place. I see it's in the ordinance, item number 7. We get a lot of complaints. I know Jeff's fielded a few that Litzinger in that residential area. I just don't want to see any commercial overflow parking ending up in that neighborhood. And then there's a fence in the rear of the building that's shared with the resident right directly behind. Is that being replaced?
That was not part of this application.
Well, I believe there's got to be some type of fencing maintained.
Yeah, I think that it's existing. I didn't see that, they didn't propose replacing it as is. It was just as existing. If there is a concern regarding the condition of that fence, we can certainly discuss that with the applicant and get into the code enforcement review of that.
Yeah, it's currently falling over, so I just want to make sure that gets replaced.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, I have that we have made a motion to perfect this on my notes, so if that is correct, can we get a roll call, please?
Alderman Plevka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes?
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Yes. Okay, by a vote of 8-0, Bill number 6370.1 will become ordinance number 5004.
Great, thank you. That moves us down to new business. The first up is Bill number 6371. Can we get a first read of Bill 6371 by title only, please?
Bill number 6371, first reading, an ordinance pertaining to the safe conduct of pedestrians.
All right, who is presenting on this, Bola? Chief?
Good evening. There was a discussion at the Public Safety Committee meeting regarding an ordinance for solicitation, strengthening the ordinance. We had talked to Mr. O'Keefe about this. He made a recommendation on an ordinance that would strengthen the ability for officers to be able to enforce people that are effectively begging at street corners. So that ordinance, I believe, is attached to your packet and was for your discussion as whether or not it'd be a good idea.
Okay, and
Mayor, if I may,
yeah.
actually, not to contradict the chief, but it has nothing to do with begging or other conduct of speech. It has to do with the safe conduct of folks, pedestrians in roadways, where the roadways are designed for vehicular traffic. This is an emphasis on the fact that pedestrians intruding into the roadway for the purpose of conducting their own business with motorists poses a public safety hazard and impediment to the safe flow of traffic, as well as the safety of motorists and pedestrians. So the focus here is not on the conduct of what a pedestrian wants to do. It is on the presence of pedestrians in the travel portion of the roadway.
Does that apply to all roadways or just?
It does.
Okay,
And it applies to all pedestrians, so
okay,
it affects hitchhikers, it affects charitable contribution, it affects conduct of any sort where people seek to interact with motorists while the motorists are in the travel portion of the roadway.
so like the old news day, whatever, the old newsboys?
If they wish to be on the side of the road, and if motorists wish to stop and get out of their vehicle and come to them, that's fine, but they can't go out into the roadway.
Okay, all right. And Alderman Lockmuller, this was taken up at Public Safety?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, we took it up. Our current ordinance was pretty vague in this area, just kind of looked at door-to-door solicitation, and this is more of a pedestrian safety type ordinance.
Okay, and was that unanimous?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So with that, can we get a motion for a second read of Bill 6371?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion for a second read? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill 6371 by title only, please?
Bill number 6371, second reading and consideration for adoption, an ordinance pertaining to the safe conduct of pedestrians.
Great, can we get a motion to perfect 6371 into ordinance form?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Any questions?
One quick question.
Yes.
So along the line, so like, fill the boot when they're holding the boot, so that will not be allowed to occur. There's no path for that kind of event to happen once this is
No,
passed,
sir,
correct?
there is not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, roll call.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Yes. By a vote of 8-0, bill number 6371 will become ordinance 5005.
Great, that brings us down to bill number 6372. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Bill number 6372, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, approving a certain easement with Spire, Missouri Incorporated, authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith, providing for the effective date of this ordinance, and containing a severability clause.
Great, thank you. Dan, you want to come on down?
This particular area is over at what used to be Mary Avenue Apartments, so it's right off of Mary Avenue. This would provide a 10-foot wide easement so that Spire could connect to their existing easement. So basically by the pedestrian, well, at the pedestrian underpass, this would allow them to connect A to B, basically. It would run perpendicular to the pedestrian area.
Great, any questions on this? We would like to have a second read on this bill as well tonight, so can we get a motion to that effect?
So moved. Second?
Any discussion on the motion for a second read? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill 6372 by title only, please?
Bill number 6372, second reading and consideration for adoption, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, approving a certain easement with Spire, Missouri Incorporated, authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith, providing for the effective date of this ordinance, and containing a severability clause.
Great, thank you. And a motion to perfect 6372 into ordinance form.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Alderman Gould.
Yeah, I just have one question. So on the conflict, this is just that one easement is all you're needing? Because on the conflict drawing, work order drawing conflict 2702 Mary Avenue that's in the packet, it shows a bunch of other lines. I just want to, that one property on that was torn down, the old locksmith printing building, it shows other lines being installed there. Is that something that?
That's not for this.
That's not for this, that's just,
Right.
okay.
But they're just showing you the detail of that intersection.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Okay. By a vote of 8-0, bill number 6372 will become ordinance number 5006.
Great, thank you. Item 10C, Bill number 6373. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Bill number 6373, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, approving a certain settlement agreement with Druco Property LLC and Brentwood Material Company, authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith, providing for the effective date of this ordinance, and containing a severability clause.
Thank you. Mr. Murray, are you presenting on this?
I am.
Thank you.
You recall that last fall, the board passed a ordinance to approve a settlement agreement with Druco. Subsequent to that, the attorney for the former property owner had some changes that they requested. We went back and forth a little bit. The result is the settlement agreement as attached to this ordinance, which would approve the revised settlement agreement. Essentially, the material terms are all the same. There are a couple typos that got fixed, and then there's also a couple minor other changes here and there. The most significant change is that the check is being made payable to the law firm for Druco, and they're agreeing to that. And that's pretty much it. They'll wrap up Druco / Brentwood Materials.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Mark on this? We would like to wrap this up tonight, so it would take a second reading. Alderman Plufka.
Your Honor, I move that we have a second reading of Bill 6373.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion for a second read? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read on Bill 6373 by title only, please?
Bill number 6373, second reading in consideration for adoption and ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, approving a certain settlement agreement with Druco Property LLC and Brentwood Material Company, authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith, providing for the effective date of this ordinance, and containing a severability clause.
Thank you. And anyone want to make a motion to perfect 6373 into ordinance form?
Your Honor, I move to perfect Bill 6373 into ordinance form.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Yes. Okay. By a vote of 8-0, bill number 6373 will become ordinance number 5007.
Great, thank you, Kelly. And that brings us to the final item under new business, and that's resolution number 1338. Who is presenting on that? Is that Robin?
Good evening. We are seeking approval for a 3-year professional services agreement with 2 one-year extensions effective for the 2021 financial audit with Clifton Larson Allen LLP, also known as CLA. You have in your packet the RFP for financial auditing services, the staff memo, RFP timeline, and the engagement letter. Are there any questions about this contract?
No questions? Wow, okay. Can we get wait, this is a resolution, right? So can we get a motion to approve resolution 1338?
So moved.
Second.
Right, any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Motion carries by a vote of 8-0.
Great, thank you. Brings us down to the final item, citizen comments. Anybody in the public care to address the board? Now is the time to do so. Just raise your hand if you're online.
Clark?
Stu Clark. Stu, the floor is yours. Just be sure to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to congratulate the board on passing these resolutions for Brentwood Park and the playground, the destination, and all the hard work by the Parks and Rec Department. And I can see our Parks and Rec Department really using this space now and incorporating it into a lot of things that the citizens can use out there. So congratulate everybody on that hard work.
Thank you, Stu. Anybody else? Okay, so we are going to move on. We do need to, we have 3 items under closed meeting. So I'm going to need a motion to go into closed session pursuant to revised statutes of Missouri, section 610.021, subsections 1, 2, and 3. That would be legal, real estate, and personnel respectively.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that?
And to adjourn therefrom.
And to adjourn therefrom, right? Okay. There we go. No discussion. Okay, roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie? Yes. Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Okay. Motion carries by a vote of 8-0.
Great, thank you. Let's take a quick break so we can get done, and got an hour before the puck drop. Go USA.